Hello, everyone. I'm here with Pampa Metals President and CEO, Joseph van den Elsen. How you going, Joe?
Good to see you. All is well here in Melbourne.
So you just got back after a pretty lengthy trip over to Argentina and the project?
Yeah, so spent a couple of weeks between Argentina and the Piuquenes project site and looking at a couple of other opportunities. So we are focused on Piuquenes, which is our flagship project. But I think it's important for juniors to also keep an eye open for other business development opportunities. So we actively assess other copper porphyry opportunities in the region. And, if something came along that we thought was complementary to the portfolio, we'd certainly pursue that pretty aggressively. That would, for context, what we'd be talking about is another copper porphyry or copper dominant porphyry project. Not interested in undrilled targets. So we'd like to find something that does have some historical ore grade intercepts, not something that's drilled out. So something where we can get on the ground and look to build out the geological understanding. So yeah, this last trip was primarily in Argentina, but did take the opportunity to look at a couple of other projects.
Do you want to start with the Piuquenes project? We must
Sure.
be at the height of the field season as it's summer over here and you can actually get a drill rig in and start drilling. Do you want to give us an update on progress out at Piuquenes?
Sure. So we're up to our fourth hole of the season. What I might do is I'll see if I can share an image with you. Whilst we do that, we're on our fourth hole. So the first two holes were at Piuquenes Central. Piuquenes Central being the only drilled porphyry target on the property, where we drilled 3 holes last season, including that 800 odd metre intersection at 0.4 copper, 0.51 gold. We've completed 2 fairly significant and meaningful step outs on Piuquenes Central. We've just completed our first hole at Piuquenes East, which we'll talk about now. And
that'd be a good one to talk about. Yeah.
Started on our second. So the image that I'm showing now is a work in progress. So this isn't something that we've incorporated into our presentations yet. But what this image shows you is in the top left-hand corner, you have Piuquenes Central, and you'll see 2 traces there being PIU 04 and PIU 05. They're the 2 holes that we've completed this season to depths of 1,100 odd metres. To the northeast, you have the Piuquenes East target, which is undrilled. So was undrilled until we got a rig there and put down our first hole this season. So PIU 06, which is shown there on the image, is 790 metre collar, and we've followed that up with REC 07, which is to the southwest, a couple of hundred metres to the southwest. And we've only started that in the last sort of couple of hours.
And that's the exact same azimuth. So you're drilling that towards the southeast?
Correct. What you'll see outside the Piuquenes tenure and the property boundary, there's 2 collars shown there, Jordan, being the ALD 195 collars and the ALD 16 collars. They are historical drill holes at Altar North that were drilled in 2012 or thereabouts. So I'm just going to try and bring up now a different image because it has been a bit sort of challenging to dig up this information here. So I'm just going to switch to a different chart and image here. Altar, as you'd be aware, has had a few different owners over the years. It's currently being developed by Aldebaran. Aldebaran have 2 major shareholders on their register, being Route 1 Private Equity Group and South 32. And Rio Tinto, as we're all aware, recently entered into an option to enter into a joint venture arrangement which would be exercised for a 20% interest through $250 million US commitment. So it's a fairly meaningful agreement that they signed late last year. The Aldebaran have also recently increased the resources at Altar. It's now about 2.4 billion tonnes measured and indicated at about 0.42 copper and 0.07 gold, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So there's been a lot of work.
Sorry, Joe. They've also got another billion tonnes outside that resource, which they don't include in that measured and indicated. But yeah, it's a huge deposit, and Pampa are directly adjacent to their property. So
yeah, and there's been a lot of work on Aldebaran over the years, and this column that I'm now showing on the screen here. So that was back in 2013. 2013 was subsequent to Stillwater's acquisition of Peregrine, which was the owner of at that time of Altar, and this ALD 195 collar drilled in 2013, 954 meter depth. That was done at Altar North. The other collar, which I've shown on this other image, is ALD 160, which was drilled in 2012 to 409 meters depth. So if we go back to that image that I showed earlier, ALD 160 and ALD 195. ALD 160 was ostensibly a vertical hole, and ALD 195 ran from east to west, about 130 meters south of the Piuquenes tenure. So we're talking about a fairly small step out to the Altar property from our property boundary. And PIU 06, the platform of PIU 6, that must be 600-700 meters away from those collars, the ALD 160 and 195 platforms. That's where the Piuquenes stock working zone is, which you visited.
Yep.
So there's mineralization, I'll come to this now, at ALD 160 and 195, and we've obviously just released visual observations from PIU 06, which support a second porphyry discovery, a second mineralized porphyry discovery here at Piuquenes. So pretty exciting, because one of the challenges that we've faced at Piuquenes, or the pushbacks, if you like, has been size of the project. So if we're able to bring online a second mineralized porphyry, then I think that's a game changer, provided, of course, we can demonstrate grade of economic interest. And the reference point being Altar, who have 0.42 copper and 0.06 gold. So if we can find something that's better grade than that and more accessible or shallower, then I think that's a pretty significant outcome.
Great, yeah. That's how potentially Pampa could be down the pipeline important to Aldi in the future, having something shallow or readily accessible, as their resource is quite deep.
Yeah, I think there's a few ways to look at it. San Juan, as we all know, is very hot at the moment, and there are a lot of people that are actively pursuing copper opportunities in the region.
Yeah.
As we all know, it's incredibly difficult to find projects, and particularly projects where you do actually have economic ore grade intercepts. So I would suggest that our project is one of the few, if not the only project in San Juan that has ore grade intercepts and has a sub couple of $100 million market cap and is in the pre-resource phase.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I think I'm sharing the wrong screen there. I'll go back to the image I'm trying to show here is actually the reported intervals from those Altar holes, the ALD 195.
Yeah.
So what you see here is this is reported mineralized intervals at Altar historical drill holes using a 0.5 copper equivalent cutoff. So for ALD 195, which was that hole that I showed before, that's the one that ran from east to west parallel to the property boundary. Here you've got from 794 meters to 820, so 26 meter interval at 1% copper and 0.1 gold. You've also got here 10 meters at 0.63 and 0.07 gold. So we are talking there about relatively small intervals at the bottom end of the hole, which was stopped at around 950. Given what we're seeing at Piuquenes East, being the outcropping and our own observations from Piuquenes, the sixth drill hole, I think these grades are pretty encouraging because it shows that there is some high-grade copper floating around, in that general vicinity. The other hole that I'll show now, which is more significant from a grade standpoint, ALD 160 is, let's bring it up here again now. So ALD 160 is, this is shown in a table that shows the intervals with a 0.2 cutoff. What you've got here is sort of 403 meters so ostensibly from surface. Now, this was a hole that was a vertical hole, and they're reporting, apologies there, they're reporting, what's that, 0.26 copper, 0.23 gold from surface, which is obviously quite significant. And using the 0.5 cutoff, what you have here is 104 meters from 300 at 0.86 copper, 0.177 gold.
Yeah.
So we obviously are still waiting on assays from PIU 06. And as I mentioned, we've just started our follow-up hole, which is this recommendation 07 from that platform shown on the image, which I'll bring up again now, heading towards the reporting intervals at ALD 160 and 195. So long story short, I think we're a few months into the drill season and very, very happy to have been able to prove a second mineralized porphyry. And if that's got reasonable grade, then I think that's a very, very significant discovery in a region where it's dominated by the majors. And Piuquenes, I think, has the potential of being attractive to anyone that wants a beachhead in San Juan, not just Aldebaran, our immediate neighbour, but really anyone that wants tenure with historical intercepts in San Juan. This is the standout, in my opinion.
Yeah, and another thing you could mention about Piuquenes East, Joe, is that historic MT survey, which shows the resistivity from the peregrine days. But low resistivity material is almost completely coincidental with mineralization at Aldebaran and in these porphyry systems. So it's almost worth bringing up just to give everyone a visual of just how untested that target is.
So one of the images that, similarly, these are things we're working on at the moment. This is the resistivity image below 300 meters. And what you'll see in the top left corner is Piuquenes Central. And you'll notice that those strong values that we reported last season, well within that resistivity impression. And you'll notice where the Piuquenes East drilling is, similarly, that's a strong resistivity figure.
Yep, great. It's all looking very exciting. It's great to drill one hole at a target or a prospect and then have that sort of veining hydrothermal brecciation show up in the core over a long, thick interval. So, yeah, hopefully this next hole shows something similar. Do you want to go over and talk about Piuquenes Central and progress made there? Because
sure.
We're expecting some assays there shortly, I'd imagine.
We certainly are. unfortunately, because San Juan is so hot at the moment and you've got a lot of drilling going on in the north, so obviously BHP have been quite active with their recent interests in Filo, not to mention Los Azules, El Pachón, and Altar all drilling. Assays take too long at the moment.
Yeah.
What this section here shows you is the PIU 04 and PIU 05 collars that we've drilled this season. Both of them are fairly significant step outs from the known mineralization at Piuquenes Central. We are very confident that we will increase the footprint and the size of the, I won't say resource, but of the complex or the mineralized body. And certainly in hole 5, we have seen some strong evidence of boron. So we are obviously have set a high standard for ourselves, particularly with the third hole of last season where, world-class intervals.
Yep.
Never going to be easy to better 800 meters from 54 meters to end of hole at 0.4 copper and 0.51 gold.
Mm-hmm.
But with these sort of step out holes, I think if we can add a good couple of 100 meters at meaningful copper and gold grade, then, we have to consider them outright successes. So 2 holes have been done at Piuquenes Central. We're now on our second hole at Piuquenes East. Depending on how the weather and our drilling rates progress, we'd like to do at least another couple of holes this season. So that may well be another one at Piuquenes Central and Piuquenes East, or depending on what we see at Piuquenes East in this hole, you might just do another 2 there. So look, I still think there's a lot of work we can do, not just at Piuquenes Central and Piuquenes East, but also in some other targets that we've picked up from surface mapping this season. We certainly won't be drilling them this season, but they're things that we'd like to bring online for next season.
So you've had a team that got out on the ground there and mapped the property, from my understanding recently. Well, yeah. Where's that at? What further work has been done from those guys?
So Piuquenes is a Argentine group that specialise in mapping in the high Andes. They coincidentally have mapped the Altar property only a few years ago in its entirety for Aldebaran.
Interesting.
We use the same group to map Piuquenes. Piuquenes, as we know, is now about 2,500 hectares, and a lot of the property is covered with talus-like cover, meaning there isn't much of a surface impression. So what we needed to do was be the first company to actually do some good property-wide mapping to try and develop a solid base map to complement the work that we've done, the worldview aster imagery we did in the off-season, which I'm just sort of bringing up here. So what you have here is, ostensibly Piuquenes Central and Piuquenes East are relatively small portions of the overall land package, and the rest of the property is quite heavily covered. We recently acquired an extra 500 hectares, which is the non-contiguous ground that runs along the Argentine-Chilean border, and similarly, that's largely covered as well. So Piuquenes have mapped the whole property. They've identified some areas for follow-up, done some limited sampling, and I think the idea is we'll probably get them, or even do it internally, to do a second visit this season to try and hone in on some of these other targets that probably aren't drill ready today, but if we can get in and do some complementary geophysics, they may well be ready for the next season.
Great. Anything else you want to cover on the Piuquenes projects while we're on the topic that we've missed? So we've talked about Piuquenes East. That's the most recent news, and Piuquenes Central, waiting for assays there. Anything else we can mention?
What's probably worth highlighting, under the assumption that there may be people here that aren't familiar with the project, that are seeing Piuquenes for the first time.
Yep.
What this map image shows here is the major copper deposits in San Juan. The focal point of this map is San Juan, but what you'll see is some blue icons which represent globally significant copper porphyry deposits on the Chilean side of the border. So this is a prolific belt, minerally endowed on both sides, the Chilean and the Argentine side. Up in the northern part of San Juan, the biggest player is the Lundin Group and now BHP. Caserones is an operating mine on the Chilean side at about 5,000 metres above sea level, operated by Lundin. NGX is Los Helados, Jose Maria, and Filo de Sol, now operated under joint venture between BHP and Lundin. They're all at about 5,000 metres above sea level. You also have Valeriano, which is ATEX Resources' flagship project. That's 1.5 billion tonnes, 0.5 copper, 0.2 gold. I think it's 4,800 above sea level. Mineralization starts 800 odd metres below surface. And then down in the southern portion of San Juan, where we are, the largest deposit is Aldebaran. So these numbers here are now dated. I've got it there as 1.2 billion tonnes, but late last year, they upgraded their resource to 2.4 billion tonnes measured and indicated. Los Azules, El Pachón, and Piuquenes. Piuquenes sits directly adjacent, contiguous to the north with Altar. And not too far across the Chilean side of the border, you have Antofagasta's Los Pelumbres operating mine. So as I mentioned before, this is a very hot district. There's a lot of activity here. All these companies on this map, with the exception of Pampa, are either owned by majors or have market caps that are, what Aldebaran, I think, is 300 million at the moment, and ATEX is thereabouts. So I think we're a standout opportunity for anyone that wants a foothold into San Juan. That could be because of the copper and the gold credits. So this is a gold-rich porphyry. I think there's a whole different universe that could be attracted to Piuquenes that perhaps wouldn't be interested in the pure copper deposits that don't have those same gold credits.
It's very interesting to observe that map just on a zooming out scale. The deposits in production in Chile in the blue that are actually producing mines, and then you go over to the other side of the border and you've got Veladero, which is huge, but it's really the only one on the Argentine side that produces, significant material. Conditions have changed apparently now. So Malay's made it much more business friendly in Argentina, and with that is opportunity, I think, especially when you see BHP in London commit to billions of dollars in the north, and you see Aldebaran progressing. It could be Argentina's time to finally get things moving.
So, look, I think the reality is that Chile has been a stable mining jurisdiction for over 50 years, and it's the largest copper producer globally. I think they produce 30-odd% of global copper production. Argentina, as you may know better than I do, has a long history of boom and bust. So Argentina, I don't think, has been able to string together that same period of stability that Chile has. And as a consequence, you've got big mineral deposits that have been discovered, but no one's been comfortable enough to invest the 3-4 billion capital that's required. So Milei came into power in December 2023, which was weeks after Pampa announced the deal with Piuquenes. And since that time, you've seen a lot of investment in exploration and also the advancement of feasibility studies for El Pachón, Los Azules, and of course the flagship projects up in the north that are now the BHP Lundin joint ventures. So I think Argentina is probably entering a window now where you probably want to see continued political stability. So I think if you could have a progressive politician like Milei sort of remain in force or be replaced by a like-minded leader, then I think you're going to see Argentina receive a lot of capital investment over the next few years. And it's worth noting, and you and I have discussed this before, how Argentina is a province-led country where in a place like San Juan, With Piuquenes, we have nothing to do with Buenos Aires or the federal government. So everything's done at the local level, and San Juan has a long history of being a pro-mining jurisdiction, Salta being the other jurisdiction that I think is well regarded in the Fraser Institutes. So we think we're in the right place, being Argentina, the right address, being not only San Juan, but surrounded by these big projects, and obviously with a good, solid, high-grade copper gold porphyry project, which is, thematically very strong at the moment.
Absolutely. And we've spent quite a bit of time in San Juan, gone to the offices there of the government and the mining department, and had good conversations with them. And it's a very pleasant place to explore.
The challenge for them is that what they need to do now is they need to try and convert this interest in San Juan into jobs. Yep. So the reality is that exploration, even though it's expensive to drill at 3,800 meters above sea level where we are, it doesn't actually create as many jobs as you might assume. So in order to lift the burden, the social security burden off the state, San Juan knows that they need to create jobs through mining operations. So they're very focused, they're very supportive on helping companies like us, progress projects and exploration. And I think tying into that, it's worth just revisiting, these intercepts that we reported last year. So what you see at Piuquenes, which is the clear standout, and I think the clear value proposition that it offers, is the gold credits. So you would have seen on that presentation map that I mentioned before, very little in the way of meaningful gold credits. Whereas in Piuquenes, what we saw last season was a very strong linear relationship between copper and gold. The standard interval there being the third hole, 801 meters, 0.4 copper, 0.51 gold, but included 518 meters at 0.53 copper and 0.73 gold. So I think Piuquenes is probably one of those projects where if we can show sufficient size, and that may well be 400 million tonnes, 500 million tonnes, relatively shallow at this sort of grade, it could well be, a good starter project for the district, being the southern part of San Juan, and a means to unlock, some of the infrastructure and some of these larger capital item projects.
Yep. Joe, do you want to bring it over to what investors can expect over the coming year or for this year in 2025 with Pampa?
Sure. Look, we put out a news release a couple of weeks ago where we summarised everything that we'd done in 2024, and our plans for 2025. So we will continue to aggressively explore Piuquenes, both Piuquenes Central, Piuquenes East, and hopefully some other targets that we'll drill in the future, with an objective of trying to reach 500 million tonnes. So we think if we can get 500 million tonnes relatively shallow at good grade with good gold credits, then you've got an incredible opportunity. That is our focus, and we're committed to doing that as aggressively and as quickly as we can. So people should expect that is and will remain our focus, and we'll be drilling, nice deep holes. This season already, 2 holes of about 1,100 meters, third hole of 800 meters. And I'd expect that this hole we're doing at the moment at Piuquenes East will be another 800 meters or so. Yep. What we are doing in parallel is looking at other opportunities. So Piuquenes is seasonal drilling. Our drilling window is from about the 1st of November to the end of April. So if we could find a project that would give us year-round news flow, had historic ore-grade intercepts, and it was something we were able to drill immediately, we would look at bringing that into the company, into the portfolio, I should say, so that when the season winds up at Piuquenes, we jump over to this other project. So that's, what people should expect from a business development standpoint. We're not interested in undrilled early stage exploration. We want things that have, a bit more meat on the bones, the sort of stories that get traction in the tough market. We're finalising our 43-101 technical report, which is the last condition precedent to migrating to the TSXV. So I've had a few questions on this. We're not preparing a mineral resource estimate. We're preparing a 43-101 technical report on the Piuquenes project as part of our TSXV migration application.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll get to that exchange, which I think is just a bit more liquid, slightly better exchange,
yep.
more accessible outside Canada for Australians such as you and I.
Yep.
And
very important.
If we could bring in another project, Jordan, then I think we would seriously look at a dual listing in Australia.
That's a very important point. Yeah. What's the thought process behind that?
So Australian markets are tough, but I don't think they're as tough as the Canadian markets. One of the issues that has faced Canada is that I think there's too many companies. The barriers to listing there are too low. And in order to get good market traction in Canada, you're spending a lot of money on IR. And I think juniors should be spending their money in the ground and not on IR.
That's a very good
point. The other point that's worth noting, and there's actually a few, but you'll notice that Solaris. So Solaris is a TSX listed company with their flagship porphyry assets in Ecuador. They were in advanced discussions with a Chinese group for a material equity investment, and it got blocked, or they were told that they would get blocked by the Canadian regulators. So in spite of the fact the assets were in Ecuador, Canadian government was going to block Chinese investment into Solaris on account of it being a Canadian headquartered company. So Solaris have actually moved their domicile to Switzerland. They're still traded in Canada, but their headquarters is now in Switzerland, and they've got no presence in Canada. They've taken it all out. So that's simply to address that issue. And the other thing, which is obviously quite topical at the moment, is potential tariff wars with the US.
Yep.
So I just think it's going to be a difficult market to get, good equity investment and good following. Australia is doing it tough. I just think it's not doing as tough as Canada. So in order to move to Australia, it does require time, cost, and effort. And you don't want to go to Australia until you've got, when I say like a good long-term story, I think having a second asset and year-round news flow and ability to drill year-round would be what we'd need to do in order to, a 50 mil plus market cap in Australia and be able to raise, good money and, avoid this situation where you're just feeding money in, doing a few drill holes as you go. So that's a priority. But as I said, we do need to get a second project, I think, of sufficient quality before you aggressively pursue that option.
You just got to make sure that the Aussies are going to embrace a porphyry story, because I know historically it's been those stories have been favourable in Canada. So there is some good news coming out of an Australian listed company with a porphyry, or they're in very early stages, that OzQuest in Peru. And they've hit some interesting stuff in some RC drilling. So yeah, they re-rated quite nicely off that. So yeah.
Not necessarily standout grade though, is it?
No.
So I mean, I'm very happy for them because it makes our project stand out even more.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah.
The grade wasn't overly compelling, was it?
No, they I don't think it was anything outstanding, but obviously anything returned in a prospect like that is significant. It's just this next follow-up drilling is going to be very interesting. They've still got a lot of assays on the way, I think, but yeah, good to see they actually moved off those results, and the market is paying attention there. So
and dare I guess, so they're ASX listed, which I think helps. The other thing, Jordan, is that for a while now, people in Australia have been complaining about the lack of copper stocks on the market. So Canada seems to have quite a number of copper stocks. I think there's a bit of an opportunity in Australia to try and create like a standout flagship advanced exploration copper play, because there's none that come to mind.
So if you would the idea of it as well, like just accumulating a a few assets, having a consistent news flow rather than the standalone porphyry on top of the Andes, which is seasonal drilling. I think it's a great opportunity. It's just being patient and waiting for the right opportunity because you do get sent, like even in my role, part-time job with Ronan, you get sent so much shit. So
no, look, I mean, absolutely right. And the reality is that it's, set up a beachhead in Argentina, which Pampa did. We were already set up in Chile, so it was quite easy for us just to cross the border, but it's not cheap. So you need to make sure you've got a project that's of sufficient size, scale to warrant the exercise, and it's got to be available on the right terms. So I've never stopped looking. So when we exited Chile, that was around July of 2023. Very quickly identified the Piuquenes project and had that deal done since November 2023. Have kept looking that whole time, and nothing has landed and closed yet. So it just goes to show, like, it's not easy to find good projects.
Yep.
And the last thing we do is destroy the good work we've done at Piuquenes with a poorly timed bad deal. So I don't think people should, be concerned that we're going to do anything reckless. But if we find the right thing, we'll move quickly and use that as a platform to get to the ASX.
We circle back to that TSXV listing. What is the delay there? Because it's the 43-101 that's taking the time, or because we have been talking about it for a while every time we've caught up. So just is that the issue?
No. So look, that's on me. What we've done with Pampa is run a pretty lean and mean ship. So Pampa, in many respects, has been a team of one, being myself, that's been across all sort of commercial and project matters. So what that means is that I'm spread pretty thin across different tasks and work streams, and getting a 43-101 technical report, it's just something that it's taken longer than I anticipated it would. So because we're a compliant CSE entity, meaning we've got audited accounts, we've been listed for a couple of years, sufficient directors with experience, so on and so forth, it literally just is the 43-101 in acceptable form, and then we can move across. So I've got an advanced draft of the 43-101 and, pushing it as hard as we can. For the benefit of recap, one of the challenges with the CSE is that in Australia, as you and I know, Jordan, the online brokers, the dominant broking houses. So CommSec, I think, has got some incredible market share. CommSec can access the TSXV, it can't access the CSE.
Yeah.
So for Canadian investors, I think they've got equal access to the CSE as the TSXV. For anyone outside Canada, it's a lot more difficult.
The same with interactive as well. Like, you don't have access on interactive brokers. That, I know that's a large portion of retail, just in
there you go
circles I talk to.
And I think what you're sort of seeing now, Jordan, is that home country bias. So when I was young, people were more likely to stick to the Australian market, whereas nowadays people look at things globally, and you need to be able to make sure that you're accessible to all possible investors. So it is important that we get on the TSXV. It is something that I take seriously. It's just it's taking longer than I'd hoped.
No worries. It all sounds pretty exciting to me with Pampa. I'm a really big fan of the Piuquenes project. I've been out there a few times, so I wish it was a little bit more reflected in the share price as an investor, but I think we've got some good things coming.
Yeah, and look, the share price aspect or question, if you like, is something that puzzles me, and obviously I wish it was a lot higher. Following our third drill hole, I think we traded at 35 cents, and we're back at basically half that. And I would argue we're in a stronger position now than we were then, having stepped out Piuquenes Central and shown that there's a system at Piuquenes East. So the valuation is something that I can't get my head around. When you're running a company like this, I think you just have to keep doing what you said you were going to do, keep moving the project forward and not focus too much on things that are outside your control. So things are tough in Canada. I can't control that. We're not going to sit on our hands and wait for things to get better. You've just got to move the project forward. And I think the valuation will sort itself out in the fullness of time.
Is there anything else you wanted to cover, or we should talk about that we haven't? We've mentioned most things that have been released to the market in the last, I don't know, it feels like it's been a busy couple of months for that. So we've covered that. I don't think that I can think of anything else based on what I've seen. Anything on your end?
No, there's nothing I can think of. I mean, we have obviously been, building out the team and our capability, and that's something we'll keep on doing. It's all systems go. I think the reality is that we're constantly looking at new opportunities, constantly looking at ways to, take the company forward. So people should rest assured that we're pretty busy at the moment and will be for the foreseeable future.
Sounds great. Well, we'll end on that note. Thanks a lot, Joe. It's been
Thanks again.